Okay, we're live now.
Nice.
Hi folks, it's good to see you. We're having Team Biscuits with Jaybo, and we're having a Google Hangout on a comparison of Christian ethics and secular ethics, and it's great to have everybody come on, and appreciate people coming on. And the whole idea of this is to have genuine dialogue and to build bridges and to critique each other's views, and also not only to do that, not just go around the same old arguments, but also to be willing to push the boat out and maybe think about other things that we've not thought about before on the topic. So it's important that everybody try to at least hear what people are saying and then think through that. So without further ado, I'm just going to say one or two things. But before I do, if people want to introduce themselves, just in case nobody knows, I mean, if you want to start with Christopher, you want to say a little bit about yourself just for a second, and then we could go along the line.
I'm not Charlie Sheen, but some people think that I look like him. And so my name's Christopher Maude. I host a show called Meeting of the Minds. I have an episode this evening in about an hour and a half with a theist by the name of Aaron Voluntarianist, and I might be mispronouncing that, but you know, I very much, in the same vein of what Jason is doing, very much want to build bridges, and because the name of my show is Meeting of the Minds, it is kind of indicative of what it is that I'm going for. I want to have a meeting of the minds. I want to talk about content and not, you know, focus on ad hominem arguments, or you know, or straw man somebody because they use a self-label that other people self-label as, and you know, and somehow, you know, thinking that that person definitely believes what other people on the extreme version of that self-label believe as well. So it's just like, so it's just fun time, fun party time. So that's me, not Charlie Sheen.
Thank you, bro. Do you want to say something, Cliff Jumper? Thank you.
I am the god Hellfire, and I bring you fire. Da, da, da. Sorry, that was a joke.
Isn't that an AC/DC song?
I don't think so. I think it's a 60s one. Do you know, there was a guy who used to sell the Big Issue on the market, and he used to just shout, you know, no, I used to sell towels, and he had this big rowdy grumbly voice, and he sounded just like the guy that did that. I am the god of Hellfire, and I bring you, and it's just the start of that song. So it always used to make me laugh. But yeah, I'm Cliff Jumper 24. I'm an atheist, and I'm interested in learning. That's what I'm here for.
Thanks, bro. Nadia, do you want to say anything? Thanks, mate.
Absolutely. I am Nadia Yvette Chambers, and well, as my lower third overlay says, I'm a godless, communist, transsexual, masochist, Linux kernel programmer, and I, well, believe that I am impacted enough by people's religious beliefs and how they act on them that I would like to engage in dialogue to, you know, persuade people to moderate.
Thanks, mate. Interesting. Thanks, Nadia. Shayra, would you like to say something about yourself?
No, I'm just here to listen. I'm doing some German homework and I need some background noise.
Okay.
Hello.
Okay. Xbox F, do you want to say something?
Yep, I'm Xbox, or you can call me Nick, either way. I'm the same thing, I'm here to learn. I'm an atheist. That's about it.
Thank you very much. And the gentleman's just come in.
Art.
Art, do you want to share just a little bit about yourself, bro?
Yeah, sure. My name is Arthur. I'm from Czech Republic. I'm an atheist. I consider myself a skeptic. I'm open-minded. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay. So I'm just we'll go on for an hour if that's okay. There'll be maybe an after show tomorrow with John McDropout, and if anyone wants to just pop in, say hello. So just an hour if that's okay. I just want to say one or two things. Just to say, you know, ask the question, what is Christian ethics? If you look at academically, there's a variety of Christian ethics. There's universalism, which there are different types of universalism, like Kantianism. There's subversive ethics in Christian ethics, which is a massive field in academic ethics at the moment, Christian ethics, where you have all sorts of subversive kind of ethical views, feminist views, etc. And then you have what is called ecclesial ethics, which is trying to look at ethics from like divine command theory, I think, and other kind of theories of ethics. So the Christian ethic field academically is a big field. So when someone says that this is the Christian viewpoint, you just have to realize there's a vast array of different views out there. That's the first point. The second point, my default position here for me is the passage where it talks about, I think it's in Philippians chapter 2. I'll just check. Sorry about this. It's a bit embarrassing when you the passage where it talks about, he thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation. I'll find it in a minute. And he went to the cross, and it's that God becoming man and went to the cross and died. And this I think is the central crux of Christian ethics, the life and death of Christ and his resurrection, and how that influenced Christian ethics in history. One example is William Booth, who said, we saw the need, we saw the people starving, we saw people going about half naked, people doing sweated labor, and we set about bringing a remedy for these things. We're obliged, and there was a compulsion. How could one do anything else? And he said, but the whole trouble is that plenty of people can do something else, they can do nothing. It was the concern that haunted a man like William Booth. This is William Barclay talking about William Booth. In 1868 was the last Christmas day he ever spent in his normal way, with a meal and a party. And from that day on, he lived for the poor and helped the poor, and dedicated his life to the poor. So that's just a little bit about Christian ethics. If you go to St. John's Nottingham University YouTube channel and you look at Dr. Wells on Christian ethics, there you'll get an overview of Christian ethics from an academic point of view.
What can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
Who becomes the authority? I know the Bible and God's Word is the ultimate authority in a Christian worldview. Who becomes the authority of the interpretation of what should be an ethic and what is unethical?
Well, the authority, it depends who you're talking to. If you're talking to a conservative evangelical, it's the Word of God. If you're talking to an Anglican, there is three things. There's a three core link. There is reason, revelation, and tradition. If you're talking to some Roman Catholics, it's not only revelation, but it's natural law. From my point of view, the principal authority is the Word of God. But if you're talking to a Catholic philosopher or theologian, they might use natural law as well as the Bible. If you're talking to an Anglican theologian, they might use the Bible, tradition, and reason. So it depends who you're talking to. From my perspective, I'm an evangelical, and that's where I'm coming from.
Well, I find that interesting. You know, I like the fact that you brought up that there is a variety of what are considered Christian ethics, and it can change depending on the denomination, because I think it's too easy for once again, because I don't like I don't like straw manning people. I think that people think that there is a Christian ethic. And in reality, there's not, right? The ethics and morals that are, you know, and the authority, the question that Xbox asked, the authority of how to interpret God's Word kind of is different depending on the denominations. You mentioned divine command theory. I happen to think that of the people that I've talked to that are Christians, that talk about morality, they seem to be using that as a main argument. Can you please explain that a little bit more, based on your understanding of it?
I to be honest, I don't like divine command theory, so I haven't studied it much because I don't think it's a good argument personally. That from what I understand, it's basically whatever God commands, that is what is right.
Yes.
That's, I don't know if I'm right in saying that, but that's comes across to me.
Well, whether that's technically correct or not, that seems to jibe with the people that I've talked to that have kind of brought that up. Like, well, God is the authority, and what He says is moral, and what He says I should do, because that's what morality is, or that's what ethical behavior is.
Yeah.
And I was just curious, I
think there's I think the danger in that is the opponent or someone who wants to trap can easily entrap that person by saying, well, if God says rape someone, then that's right because He's commanded it, and that's the problem with that kind of argument. So I've tried to avoid that, but it is quite popular with quite a few people out there. But I don't think I think it's Christian theology is rooted in the character and nature of God. It's a Trinitarian position.
You can put a limit in boxing in God whenever you put restrictions on Him like that. As if you start limiting and boxing in God when you start putting restrictions like that on Him.
Yeah. That's, I think that, yeah, and Christian ethics has to flow out of not just command but the nature of God. And Christianity is Trinitarian. If you actually look at a lot of Christian apologetics and a lot of Christian theology, you listen to them arguing you and debating you, and you will find very little mentioned about the Trinity in the arguments or anything they say. And the reason is that they're not actually thinking about the foundations that the character and nature of God is central to Christian ethics. And the problem is divine command theory is it's contextual in the sense that it's talking about individual commands, but it's not rooted as much in the character as God as it should be. That's what I think. I don't know what you think.
Well, admittedly, and Cliff Jumper, I'll throw it to you just in one quick second. I think that it is unique, Jay, that you are hosting this, and I think that you're the only Christian theist on the panel. So, the last thing that I want is this to be like a, jump on, Jason kind of weirdness. But what I do want is to understand what it is, where it is that you're coming from. So when you say the nature of God, because I think that's the phrase that you used, as an evangelical, you think that your Christian ethics come from the nature of God.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Can you unpack that a little bit?
Well, I think I'm actually working on it myself, because there's not a lot of theologians or theological books written in terms of how the Trinity relates to A, apologetics, B, epistemology, and C, ethics. There's not a lot of literature on it, and yet it's our basic foundation. Van Til has mentioned a bit about it, but I like Van Til, but I find him a bit wooden because of his Calvinism doesn't tend to lend itself to. He did go and talk to people and engage with people, but the Calvinism can be a little bit wooden, where it's not willing to be flexible to engage with people. And
just to be clear, you're not Calvinist.
I'm a moderate Calvinist, which means I hold to Calvinism moderately. I'm not going to die on a hill for Calvinism.
You have the flexibility, like you're saying.
Yeah, and I tend to see other Christians, people who maybe I don't agree with the Catholic system, but there may be Catholics who know Jesus. There are Christians who are Methodist, Anglican. There are different Christian groups, and they're not Calvinist, and they should be respected the same. And often Calvinists can be a bit parochial and think that they're the only ones within the Christian world, and I don't agree with that. But the point is that the Trinity it's relational, and the issue there is that we're made in the image of God to be relational, and so that's why Jesus comes down on the earth as the incarnation, because it's part of this relational God. Whereas deism is God has set things in motion and is at the back of the universe and just staying there. The Trinitarian God is relational and involved in history and relating to human beings, and that's the difference, I think.
Now, I know that Cliff wanted to say something, and I interrupted, so I like.
No, that's fine. I'm glad you're not a divine command theorist. I think I understand the reason why. Divine command theory to me tends to be very black and white. White, as in, because God says so, that's right. And you're much more interested in the epistemological factors of things. I remember having a chat with a couple of street preachers on. It was the weekend of the Pride Festival. Two young guys, step ladders, young black guys. Have you seen them? Anyway, yeah. So he's standing on step ladders saying about things, all sorts of things, and people are questioning him on all sorts of things. And I said, and he was talking about, morality and things like that, fornication, etc. And I said, "Steal," and he held up his Bible and said, "Because it says so." And I find that the worst argument, because the reason for my mind, the reason why it's bad to steal is because I have had 3 bicycles stolen from me. I know how it feels to have something stolen from me. It didn't feel good. So if I was to steal something from somebody else, that would make them feel bad, and feeling bad is not nice, so it's wrong. Now that's a thought process, that I've come to enhance the law, because we've got the law saying don't steal from people, you get into trouble if you do. And I have created a why aspect for that, an epistemological why. It's not why the law is relevant to me.
And it's hard to enforce something. Sorry, Cliff, go ahead.
So I was saying that I think that's where it comes down. It comes down to a personal level on that.
Well, I think there's a difference. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I might be wrong. When I understand divine command theory, I understand it in a philosophical sense. That someone would try and make a philosophical argument that such and such a thing is right based on God has said it. Where I would tend to see that as different in terms of saying that the Bible is your authority, and because God says it's right. I know to you it sounds like, oh well, it just sounds crazy, but to me I would see that as a different issue than a philosophical argument about divine command theory, like the way William Lane Craig uses that. So for me, I would say that we're made in the image of God. This is how I would understand it, is that we're made in the image of God to be relational, and that is why you feel that concern for other human beings, is that you're a relational person, and so we all have that desire to relate to each other. And for me, or for the way I understand Christianity, is that the Bible is teaching us to relate to each other in a better way, even though you would disagree with that. So for me, it's not a case of I just obey this blindly, but for me it relates to my nature of who I am as a human being. And when I see Christ and what he's doing, like the Good Samaritan and things like that, that it resonates with me as a human being, that I am made to be relational, and as I'm looking at Christ and what He's teaching, that's the way I'm to be. So it's not just a case of I have to do it because it says it. There is this issue about relational aspect to it.
The question I would have for Cliff. Oh, go ahead, Cliff.
But that's where it breaks down. That's where, if you, the chap in Manchester, he was basically going off the, was it Sixth Commandment, whatever it is, thou shalt not steal. That was it. That was as far as he was going with it. Whereas you might use that and say, okay, well, that's the basis of it. What's the depth of it? You're more interested in looking at the depth within why it's not, and find other scripture to justify why. Whereas his divine command theory is because it says so in the Ten Commandments, or it says so in Leviticus, or it says so in that kind of thing, and it's very, very low level. It's not really going into depth at all. It's superficial.
The question I was going to raise to you, Cliff, is and I'm sure that you have a response to this, but let's face it, we can't base our morality just on things that have happened to us that make us feel bad, because there is a whole host of bad things that could happen that haven't happened to us, right? The example that you gave was, stealing. It very much had to do with stealing, right? The Sixth Commandment, one that you were just talking about. You've had bikes stolen from you, and you know what that feels like. Well, I'm pretty sure there are things that haven't happened to you that you can still be compassionate about and empathic about, that that would prevent you from doing it, knowing the harm that it could manifest from that.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's not purely based upon my own suppositions. It's based upon I can. It's all based upon empathy. I suppose my moral founding is based upon love. And it's for example, I'm not gay, but I can empathise that how it would feel to be persecuted if you were gay. I can understand how upsetting it would be for an older person to be denied a job because they're old, or a woman to be denied a job because she's a woman, things of that nature. I can understand how upsetting it might be for Muslim women to be told that they've got to completely cover up because of some historical tradition, So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's important, because it's not just the and Nadia, I'm going to throw it to you right after this, because it's not just about like I said, things that have actually happened to you. It's about the thought experiments that we can engage in to ensure that what is the best for humanity relationally, right? And I think that's the term that Jason was using.
Can we wear someone else's shoes?
Exactly. Just being able to put yourself in that position mentally to understand what would and would not be harmful. I think that's also a big component. So Nadia, you were going to say something.
Well, I think there are two different directions to go. I mean, essentially what you're touching upon is something on the order of the golden rule. And one of the widely noted flaws in that is, of course, that essentially what is harm and what is well-being and so on can differ between individuals. So to the extent you have empathy, it's not merely the external circumstance or event that might be getting applied to them, but also their innate differences in nature. Another is that it also raises the question of what good and evil are in our conceptions. And I think from the standpoint of empathy, it's arguing a very sort of utilitarian notion of what good and evil are. Good is well-being and joy, and evil is suffering and harm. So, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm trying to avoid getting into cliches, because there's so many different things we could say, and so I'm trying to think of things to say that are different than what we would normally hear. So it's difficult because I'm hearing cliche responses. I don't just want to give the cliche responses. What I listened to one guy, I think it was Dr. Wells on St. John's. I think it's St. John's or not at Nottingham University. If you type in Karl Barth on YouTube, and you'll find St. John's YouTube channel, and go on there and you'll find Dr. Wells on ethics. But he said something I thought was interesting, which I'd never thought about. He said one aspect of Christian ethics is he talks about Aristotle, and how in modern ethical theory, since the Enlightenment, Aristotle has not been as much stressed or thought about in modern ethical theory. This is what he said. Whether that's true, I don't know. But he said Aristotle was concerned not just the decision process, but also about the character of the decision. So I thought about that with Christianity. I think Christianity is very concerned about you as a person, not just your motive, not just the decision process, which are very vital, but there's a big concern about your character. So if you read 2 Peter chapter 1, it says add to yourself faith, love, and it goes on these characteristics that a Christian should be. And I think in the Sermon on the Mount, where the Beatitudes, I think it's in Matthew 5, where the Lord says, "Blessed are those who are pure in heart," and he goes through these Beatitudes, and it's about the character. So that's just a dimension, just an interesting thought about how character is also part of the decision process. That who we are as a person and what kind of people are we meant to be as human beings, and that helps to make a decision.
Well, on a contrast, what
Yeah.
in, say, a secular ethics system or moral system stands out to you that would not fit into a Christian moral system?
That's a good question. I think I listened to, if you want to go and listen to it, I'd recommend it. It's by R.C. Sproul, if I'm pronouncing it right, S-P-R-O-U-L. He's a favourite theologian of mine. If you type in secularism, R.C. Sproul, on YouTube, and at the end of the lecture, he contrasts, he says that with secular ethics, it's about the here and now, it's about dealing with the here and now. Where in Christian ethics, there is also a concern that our actions don't impact the here and now, or not just the here and now, but that it also has an effect for an eternity. So that's one area possible.
I would heavily dispute that, if I may interrupt. I mean, secular ethics do not just concern the here and now; they can also extend to the far future. Why not? I mean,
Yeah, I take that. I take that point. It's just maybe future. I don't disagree with that. That sounds good, but I think Christian ethics would, certain Christian ethics would be about eternity. I think, and that is, I think, a big difference.
yeah, but the thing is, in Christian ethics, in that case, it would be thinking of eternity in heaven or hell. It would not be concerned with this material world's eternal future, because you Christians don't believe this material world is going to be here eternally, correct? There's going to be the second coming of Jesus, and this world is going to be destroyed, basically, right?
Well, I think in Christian, different theologians have different understandings. I mean, some theologians believe it's going to be a new heaven and a new earth. I think if you read Romans 8, it talks about that creation is groaning, and it's not only us that are finding it difficult and struggling in life, but nature is struggling, and part of the redemption is not only for human beings, but for nature, that it will be redeemed.
So does nature play a role in Christian ethics? I thought it was more about the person, the humanity, and the soul, or whatever.
Well, I think that for Christian theology, it's whether evolution is correct or whatever, but from a Christian theological point of view, creation is absolutely vital. Our relationship to creation. Go back to Genesis chapter 1, 2, and 3. That is a very foundational paradigm for Christian theology. That you have the reason it is because from a Christian theological point of view, you have the ontology, which means being. You have the being of God. Then you have creation, which is dependent on God and which God says is good. And then you have human beings in relation to God and in relation to nature within creation. Human beings have a responsibility and a mandate in that creation account to care for the world and to be good stewards of the world. So from an ethical point of view, that's carried into the New Testament as you know, the created order is important. It's not just about relational, about how we relate to each other as human beings, but how we relate to our environment.
Maybe that's where the question came from, is because a lot of on the Christian ethics side, I see that God will take care of the nature part. God will take care of the world part, no matter what we do to it.
Yeah,
God will serve that. But
I think the reason is because if you look at the history of Christianity, if you look at the history of Christian theology, what you'll find is the gospel, the idea that that this is really important, is to get a grasp of Christianity, is the gospel. From a Christian perspective, depending what Christian perspective, but just from the Protestant evangelical perspective, is about you get saved, you by grace, by what Christ did on the cross. But there's also that is part of the salvation, but the salvation is also about being a disciple and living in the world and redeeming the world now, shining as light in the world. And so in the 19th century, you get a major split. You get those people who are orthodox evangelical preaching the gospel, and then you get these people who are liberals who've ditched the inspiration of the Bible, but they're concerned. They take on this teaching of Jesus, which is concerned about redeeming the time, redeeming nature, living in and helping human beings, doing social action, helping the world around them. And it's only like in the 1960s with a theologian called John Stott at Lausanne, who brought these two strands together and said, look, we've not only got to preach the gospel, but we've also got to be concerned about the here and now. And so what you tend to do is you tend to get some evangelicals who are concerned about preaching the gospel, but they're not concerned about the social issues of now and the issues of now. Christianity, true Christianity, is not. There shouldn't be a division there. There should be a concentration on preaching the gospel, but also a concentration on the here and now. And that's what you see with William Booth and the Salvation Army when it first started out. It was concerned for people's souls and getting people saved, but he couldn't sleep. He just couldn't sleep because he was so heartbroken about the poverty, and he had to do something there and then. And so what you're seeing today is often you're seeing a more narrow-minded evangelicalism that is wrapped up in its own concerns and not reaching out to the world and dealing with the issues of the world. But there are evangelicals that are trying to do that.
Well, I know that Cliff wants to say something, but one quick question is, how do you consider the evangelicalism of today narrow-minded? Like what is narrow about it? Is it the fact that they're not trying to reach out?
Well, I think when you look at the life of Christ, he was out amongst people. He was out amongst human beings. He was out amongst the people who were cast out, the lepers, the prostitutes, tax collectors. These were the people who couldn't go to the temple. They were seen as outcasts. And when Jesus said, "Go into all the world and make disciples," there's a core belief there, but there's also you go out, and I think the narrowness is that the Christian faith has to be about going out to people, sharing the good news, but also ministering that in not only word but in deed. So, for example, in the Middle Ages, if you read Dr. Hart called Atheist Delusion, sorry about this, guys, I didn't mean it to say that, but this is his book, Atheist Delusion, and it's Dr. Hart talks about the Middle Ages where there were 600 hospitals started, and that's the better side of the Christian ethic.
Do
So
you think?
what I'm saying narrow. Yeah, sorry.
So I was just going to say, do you think his title was inspired by Dawkins, God Delusion?
Probably
Yeah,
was,
yeah. I think I've got the title wrong. I might have got it wrong. I suspect Art might know the book better than me. Yeah, but I think that in one sense we should all try and get. I was reading this book. I'm not flashing it just to say, but I'm reading this book. I've just come to the end of it, and he is a Muslim theologian. He's a moderate Muslim theologian, and he's trying to navigate Islam in the West. And he noticed that secularists have some kind of the same values as Islam in terms of Islam wants to respect the poor and the individual from his perspective, and so he's trying to build on these. He's trying to build on the common ground, and then trying to ignore the differences, like these issues about wearing the hijab and things like that. And what I'm trying to say is that I think there is common ground between secularism and Christianity, but then there is going to be challenges and with each other. There's going to be clashes.
There was one thing that when you were talking earlier about the environment, there's one type of fundamentalist that really bothers me, and it's the climate change denialist types.
Yeah.
Who are of the opinion, and I think they're more trying to use the Bible to justify their political idealism, because they tend to be involved in the petroleum industry and things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But effectively, their argument is that we're at the end times. So it doesn't matter if we screw up the atmosphere, the environment with pollution and things like that, and that besides which, it's a load of rubbish anyway, and they use very dodgy science to demonstrate it, and it goes against all the scientific models that are out there. And I find it so short-sighted. I find it offensive in its short-sightedness. If you or I have children, those are the people that are going to have to, and our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren are the ones that are going to suffer if we don't make changes soon.
Well, I agree. I agree with you. There's two things there. I think number one, if you look at like Francis Schaeffer, he's dead now, died in 1980s, but he wrote books on Christianity and ecology and things like that. So there are theologians out there and Christians who are interested in these issues and thoughtful about them. The other thing I'd say is whenever you meet narrow-mindedness in whatever way it is, the Christian ethic is that we're saved by grace, that in Luke chapter 15, the prodigal son, he goes off, he comes back to his father, he says he's messed up, the father puts a ring on his finger, etc. And I think that we can show, and I'm saying to you, even not believing in Jesus, but we can show grace to those people, and by just recognizing that we can challenge them, but also we can, I suppose, within their parochialness, we can somehow try to see their own. Everybody's got a story, and even those who are fundamentalists. I mean, I'm a fundamentalist in the old sense of the 1920s sense, but you know, even fundamentalists, there's something about their story and who they are as a human being that you can maybe learn from or appreciate. And very often, I'm guilty of this. I'm the worst in the world for it. Very often, I can be quick to judge others who might seem to be strong-minded in their opinions. Just a thought.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm so strong-minded in my opinion, I know you're wrong. Comedy relief, people. Comedy relief.
With your ideas about the here and now, while it's maybe more Catholic, what are your opinions about liberation theology?
Liberation theology. I've got quite a few books on liberation theology. They're scattered all over the place. I find all types of theologies fascinating. I find liberation theology fascinating.
Can you tell me real quick, like a real quick breakdown of what liberation theology is?
Well, liberation theology is the idea that people need to be empowered. People who are in poverty, who are being oppressed, that we need to empower them, and so we give the people the tools so that they can break the power of repression. So it principally is strong in Latin America, where there was a lot of political oppression, and there were these priests, Catholic priests mainly, who were influenced by Marxism, and they just thought, we've had enough of this, and basically they went to the poor people, and they give people the tools, educational tools and the social tools to empower themselves, to liberate them from oppressive political structures. And so there's a rich, there's a massive world of folk scholarship from some great liberal. I mean, I don't agree fully with some of their foundational views. I mean, some of them wouldn't be inerrantist or anything like that, but I am massively inspired by the gutsiness of these kind of priests, because a number of these theologians lost their lives. They were killed for trying to do this kind of stuff, yeah, so it's a rich heritage. Even if you're not a Christian, you would gain a lot by reading the stuff. I mean, I can just well, I'll put a link to resources underneath, and you can go and read some of the books, and you'll be fascinated if you're interested in people who are being downtrodden, and you're interested in empowering people. Then you'll find these people quite inspirational. Some of them lost their lives. Some of them can't even go back to certain Latin American countries at the moment.
Oh, right on.
I just have looked at. I've got these are two. These are, if you want to look up, if you want to do some reading, I'd encourage you to read this guy.
Sabino.
Yeah, he's one of the main guys, and then this is a book on liberation theology, and it looks at different theologians. I'll put a link to this book for you.
Yeah, appreciate
but like
it.
I said, I'm evangelical, and I'm pretty set in my ways in the core beliefs, but I'm always ready to learn from other strands of Christianity, other traditions as well, you know. And that's one strand that I'm fascinated with and like to read more.
Right on.
I think when it comes down to the secular morality kind of idea, I think the idea is to be inclusive of other groups rather than to be exclusive and only cater to our own or that kind of thing. You know, I mean, I'm going to bust your chops a little bit here, Jason, I'm afraid. I'm going to do a Chris Mousey. And what I've seen a couple of videos where you have said about sort of Darwinism, you know, and how it's amoral and things like that. But Darwinism is only a descriptive study of biology, really. It's not sociology. So, for example, if we were to use a sort of Darwinistic style of law of the jungle to live by, we wouldn't have invented wheelchairs. We'd say, if you want to get around, you'll have to crawl. You know, we wouldn't have disability laws saying that public buildings must have wheelchair access, and you know, we wouldn't have benefit systems and things like that. Those are secular ideals.
Yeah, you know, I don't want to quibble with science in terms of the scientific method and what that can achieve, but I think also you have to realize, I think it's a fair point to make, that since the Enlightenment, especially in the Enlightenment, that there's not just been an agenda for rationality and knowledge. There have been power structures being at play, old structures being pulled down, new structures being put up. And I think, for example, in the French Revolution, the church and state, you know, the skeptics there wanted to pull that away, and rightly so. I don't disagree with what they were trying to do, but there was a power game going on, and I think that right through the Enlightenment, right through the 19th century, right into modernity, there has been a power play going on against what I would call meta-narratives. The meta-narrative in the West was Christianity principally. That meta-narrative was transplanted by modernity, and now we're in a post-modernity. So my point to you is, there's some truth to what you're saying, but at the same time, I would ask you to just think about, you know, Foucault, a French philosopher, talked about, he did a paper on the Enlightenment and looked at the word enlightenment and showed how, you can get his lecture online, and he showed how the word enlightenment was used as a power word to control certain groups. And so there is this power structure. You can see it here with Tariq Ramadan, just an example. He is an Islamic theologian in Western culture. Sorry?
That was an accident, sorry.
All right, I'll just finish this. Sorry for waffling on, guys. But his agenda, ultimately, I mean, he's trying to build bridges with people, but his agenda is to make Islam central to Western culture. And he uses a few ways of doing that. One is enculturation. He's saying that Islam is not something that is foreign. We have now indigenous Muslims, and we have to realize as the West that Islam is a Western religion. He tries to build bridges with feminists and other groups who are willing to work with him. But you can see that there are certain feminist groups, certain secularist groups that don't agree with this kind of him trying to embed himself into Western culture. So you can see a power play being played by secularists and feminists and Islamists, and this power play is going on everywhere, and we have to recognise that.
Well, one thing to bear in mind, I don't know the heritage of that chap, but one thing to bear in mind is that a lot of the Muslims that came to Britain in the 1960s and that kind of period, they came because they didn't like the Sharia law and the more authoritative systems that they had there, that they were looking for something more liberal, and so that's why they have so many here. And so I would expect that the Western culture has influenced his understanding. If he's British and he's gone to a British school, he's going to have a crossing between the two.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Can I ask you questions now, guys?
Yeah.
Well,
what motivates you in discussion about you are passionate about? What is it that motivates you?
Myself, I like to compare and contrast myself with other people. How do you know why you work, what makes you tick, unless you can compare it with what makes other people tick?
Yeah, yeah.
And really, I like the company. I have Asperger's and agoraphobia. I don't go out very much at all. So as a result, this is my equivalent of going to the pub. Except for I don't have to worry about people who are empty-headed drinking beer. I can chat to people a bit more smart and drinking beer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for that. Anybody else?
Well, I am rather particularly motivated by, I suppose, what you could call ethical disputes. I have maybe 7 areas, maybe 8 that I don't know, try to inject into things, but I don't really try to take over. They're essentially sex and science education, reproductive rights, LGBT rights, the right to die, the fossil fuel depletion, climate change mitigation, antibiotic resistance, and of course Middle East peace. So.
I think one of the things that I'm quite passionate about is I really have a problem with the anti-vaccination people. That it is dangerous. That if you have people that go unvaccinated, then that's not just possibly going to hurt them if they contract something, but it's going to affect other people. And parents are making decisions based upon a lack of knowledge. Based upon lies, to be honest, and that's the kind of, they're almost as fundamentalist as fundamentalist Christians are. They're so entrenched in a position that it's hard to make them understand, and they have confirmation biases. You say something and you're wrong. It's as simple as that. As much evidence as you can supply, they still won't accept it.
Oh.
Sorry, guys. Go.
I'll pass my usual article around about anti-vaxxers. Well, persuasion more generally, but anti-vaxxers are used as an example.
And I'm mostly on here. I like all these points of view of people that I wouldn't even come across in my town or in my area. I like learning. Whether I disagree or agree, I still like where these people came up with their ideas, how their mindsets are, and how they work. Like a lot like Cliff said. But I like learning. I guess our nature, our social nature.
What you might be impressed with is that I looked up something after chatting to Andy Jack last night. I looked up something on the internet today, and I discovered that a local church does Bible study. And although I wouldn't be interested in I'm not interested in from a religious point of view, but Britain, the history of Britain is ingrained in religion. How do you understand your own culture without understanding the roots of its history? The Magna Carta, all sorts of things like that. Those things are enshrined in the history of Britain. And so I'm thinking about going and doing that in the same way as I might, the approach I'm going to take is I would be, because we live in a sort of an area where there's quite a lot of Muslims and Sikhs and Hindus, that if we wanted to learn about that religion, where's the best place to go? I could go to a mosque and learn about what makes Muslims tick by reading about the Quran and understanding what they're talking about. Like I say, I'm not interested in converting or becoming religious. I'm just interested in knowing what makes them who they are and what's relevant to understand the Bible from more than a superficial sense.
Well, it's like learning a language. Any language, you can learn it from a textbook, but unless you're around the people that speak it. It's a totally different experience, and you see it in a different light.
Mm.
Jason, I think that most of the hangout is revolved around, Christian ethics or theistic ethics.
Yeah.
Is there anything, because you actually have an opportunity here with a panel full of atheists or secularists. Are there any questions that you wanted to bring up, or topics about secular ethics?
Yeah, I just I've got a few questions that I could throw out. Just be interested to hear what your views are. First question is, what would you say is the foundation, from your perspective, of secular ethics? Because reading about it today, I didn't have much time, so I just went on Wikipedia, and there was different strands of secular ethics. So I just wondered what each person thought they thought was the foundation.
Well, funnily enough, I have exactly that on my screen right now. I've got the tenets of secular ethics, and I thought, I wonder if it'd be worth bringing in that to sort of break down, go through the list and break it down. So I'll do the screen share because it's easier to do a screen share. You might want to maximize me. It's up to you.
I don't know how to do it, bro. I'm scared of messing.
All you do is you click on my picture, and it should have a white box around it.
Okay. Yeah.
And that should make it the main screen in the Hangout.
I'll present to everyone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. When you were talking, I could see Cliff Jumper screen.
Okay.
So what it says here, it says the tenets of secular ethics. Despite the width and diversity of their philosophical views, secular ethics generally share one or more principles. Human beings, through their ability to empathize, are capable of determining ethical grounds. I don't know, do you want to stop there and talk about that, or just continue through it all?
Well, I read that just before we came out, and the thing for me is, as I read that, there were these different views of later on from there, and I just wondered what each person thought was the foundation of secular ethics as they saw it. And we could look at that, compare that to what people are saying if you want to. And then so that would be my first question, really, for each individual person, of how do you see the foundation of secular ethics? Because there's can't add one idea, and
because everybody's going to have a little bit of a variant on it.
So if that's okay, Cliff Jumper, I mean that's a good idea, but I mean you could go through that now so that people can get a general idea if you wanted to, and then when you've done that, we could let people just then give their own spin on what they think is the foundation.
Yeah, I'll just read it out. So it says, human beings through logic and reason are capable of deriving normative principles of behavior. This may lead to behavior preferable to that propagated or condoned based upon religious texts. Alternatively, this may lead to advocacy of a system of moral principles that a broad group of people, both religious and non-religious, can agree on. Human beings have the moral responsibility to ensure that societies and individuals act based upon these ethical principles, and society should, if at all possible, advance from a less ethical and just form to a more ethical and just form. I don't think I've said that right. And then finally, I'll read to the bottom of here. It says, many of these tenets are applied in the science of morality, the use of the scientific method to answer moral questions. Various thinkers have framed morality as questions of empirical truth to be explored in a scientific context. The science is related to ethical naturalism and a type of ethical realism. In how good people make tough choices, resolving the dilemmas of ethical living, Rushworth Kidder identifies 4 general characteristics of an ethical code. 1, it is brief. 2, it is usually not explanatory. 3, it can be expressed in a number of forms, e.g. positive or negative, single words, or a list of sentences. and 4 centers on moral values.
Okay, that'll be okay. Thanks. Good. If people want to,
A good line to make there too before you move to the individuals is that there's no over-encompassing umbrella of all of this, because if there was, you could have a society of masochists that find pleasure from pain, and everybody would follow into that. A system like this is more individual to filter that out, if that makes any sense.
You might want to unclick the box now.
All right.
Because otherwise it's just me, and I feel weird talking to myself.
All right.
You are such a handsome devil.
Thanks for that. So yeah, so my question is, what is your foundation of secular ethics? How do you see it? And then the second question is, what is the future of secular ethics?
Well, at least for me, I don't have an answer for what the foundation of secular ethics are, because, as somebody who, does accept evolution, I don't think that evolution necessarily dictates where ethics come from, unless you talk about, like, social evolution, in which case the way that you're enculturated allows for the golden rule principle to make a little bit more sense, because treating others like you want to be treated doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists within the culture that you're brought up in, and that culture is ever changing, hopefully towards the better and not towards the worse. But and if it is, then other cultures can come in a globalist position and be like, hey, you're doing things that are fucked up, pardon my language, that are messed up. So I don't know about that, because it's a homunculus. It's just like it's ever regressing. So I don't know what the foundation is, but as far as what the future is, I'm expecting that the way that I just explained it, the way that individuals engage in the golden rule, based on the way that they are enculturated, assuming that their culture that they're enculturated in has a certain set of standards that have worked towards social progress, as they understand it, and the progress of making the world better for humans in the future. That's how it's going to look, and we can't predict that, or I can't predict that, I should say. I can't see how the world is going to change 500 years from now, so that the way that they think, and they look back at us, stupid 500-year-old, whatevers. I can't predict that, but I think that's where I'm coming from, and that's just a pretty ham-fisted answer, to be honest. But that's as honest as I can be.
I'm somewhat on the similar lane of thought, that I think that secular ethics comes from basic morality and the golden rule. So how can you have a society that works if you think that your neighbor might kill you or steal from you, or take your girlfriend or wife or whatever? You need to have some kind of set of rules and things to go by. And I think, you can almost see it in the Bible. You can see that you've got the 10 Commandments, which are the sort of the basic level. You've got your Leviticus and things like that, where that culture was saying, right, we're going to have these sets of laws. And then you've got a more modern style thing where people are saying, okay, well, that's what the past was. We're now going to try, we're going to make things more equal for people, which is where you've got, the Enlightenment and things like that. The future I see is people striving for more equality. That although we can vote and have our say to a certain point of view, I think that the future is to a more egalitarian style. So something we've seen with the Occupy movement when the banking crisis happened. When we see people say, marching to say, hey, we want this kind of equality, or we don't want, like, for example, you've got the BNP, they're marching to say we don't like black people and foreign people, and then you've got the opposite, the anti, I forgot what they're called now. They're saying no, this is completely out of order, anti-fascism group, and they're saying, look, this is completely out of order, and we will fight to defend those people. So, and I think that's what's going to happen. I think that, right now we've had this skew between the very rich and the very poor, and that gap is getting wider and wider and wider. And I think that people are going to come together and say, look, this is completely wrong, and we're going to have to start reducing that gap. Because otherwise, and we've seen it in this country at the moment, that there are people that are unable to feed their children, and they are, both parents are working, but they are struggling to survive. They're struggling to live, and this is why we've got food banks and things like that. That shows that we need to have some changes in our system. And I think that's where the future's going.
And I don't, like I said before, the over-encompassing thing too. I don't think, like, even the golden rule is a all-encompassing thing either, because on that same token, you have a serial killer wanting, treat others how you want to be treated. If he wants to be treated or a masochist wants to be in the pain, then that's the society you end up with. So it's more of a guideline than a set, strict rule.
Yeah.
I just want to say hello to the Cerberus.
Cerberus. Hey, Cerberus.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Oh, yes, hello.
Hi, mate.
Anybody else? I do want to point out. I just want to point out that we're coming up on the 1 hour mark.
Okay.
So, yeah. To follow through with the question that you had originally asked for the people that haven't contributed, and the question is, what is the foundation for your secular ethics, and where do you see it going in the future? I think that Nadia and Xbox have yet to respond, and our newest Cerberus. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. If you wanted to join in on that, then I think that would be awesome.
I agree with both of y'all. There's not much I could add to that. If you want to move to Nadia and.
Well, in my case, I see. The secular ethics cited in the. I can't remember what you called the document, but that secular ethics document. We're relatively neutral. I think it's necessary to incorporate components from essentially a number of different forms of ethics: utilitarian, neo-pragmatic. Well, actually, they explicitly state neo-pragmatic. Consequentialist, deontological, and archaic. So, if any component of all that is missing, then I think you have an incomplete system. I also think that, both in terms of the ethical system and the future, there's quite a bit about our obligations to our fellow people, and in terms of the inequality and poverty and such, that's at the crux of it. But there is also, furthermore, just in general, positive action that we are obligated to do, that we have to acknowledge. And in that respect, I think there's also more. We have to furthermore acknowledge, multifactorial and indirect, causation or responsibility. When a group is responsible and it's diffuse responsibility, we have to be able to properly account for that. I don't think many ethical systems do. That's going to be an issue in the future, or an issue that I think is pressing to address in the future. And also indirect, when things are happening, people disclaim responsibility because it's such an indirect effect. That also needs to be accounted for, and I think in the future that'll also be an issue. For instance, collective responsibility for environmental damage. it's traceable down to which countries have done how much environmental damage, but no individual in the country wants to stand up and say that they had a greater share than someone in Zambia or whatever. So at that point, I think those are maybe 3 major issues for the future, and that should cover it.
It sounds good. I think if you run for president, Nadia, I will be voting for you, mate.
I'll seriously consider it. Cheers.
Well, if I could vote for you.
Nadia 2016.
Okay, we've got 5 minutes before we wrap up. I'm going to wrap up in a minute, guys. I've had a great time. Does anybody else want to say anything? I'm glad that it's been like this. We could have busted each other's chops a little bit on fundamentalism and stuff like that, but we could do that another time, and how that relates to secularism. But I think it's been, I do think it's been a really nice atmosphere, and it's something to build on if you want to build in the future to do this again. So I don't know. I'll leave it for you to say whatever you want to say for the next few minutes, and then I'll let Christopher Mouty, if you want to finish off, mate, and then we'll end it after you finish, mate.
Well, I think Cerberus, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and please forgive me if I'm not, who has recently joined us, if you know what we're talking about and you want to contribute about, secular ethics and what the foundations are for whatever secular ethics you may or may not adhere to and what the future is for it, I'd love to hear that in the next couple minutes.
Okay. I guess I'm somewhere in between. I'm Masonic. My family's Masonic. We believe that you shouldn't force your beliefs on anyone else. This basic ethics or faith, either way. As long as respect's shown, you're supposed to treat people as they wish to be treated. And as far as when it comes to making laws go, it's really just what would be the most functional.
And I think that illustrates beautifully, and this is the point that I'm going to wrap it up on, that illustrates beautifully the difference in diversity within which secular ethics can occur. Shay, I know that you mentioned that you wanted to just chill out and listen while you were doing your homework, but I did want to give this last opportunity to you in case you wanted to say something. I don't want you to feel left out.
About what?
About the closing statements. Everyone has had closing statements, and
I've been gone for 4 minutes. I had to do something downstairs.
No, okay. So,
just to say, Chris, before you finish, I'm probably going to do a Google Hangout with John McDropout tomorrow if you want to see it. So it's going to be a one-on-one. So we'll maybe bust each other's chops a little bit. So
nice.
You're going to watch that tomorrow. Tomorrow night at 10 p.m. probably, roundabout.
There is one thing that is I'm just trying to find the wording for it, but I think it's a very good one. And it's the Hippocratic Oath. It's the one that doctors do.
Cause no harm.
Yeah, and I think that is a very good. It's a very good idea of what ethical things should be. It's sort of I swear to do no harm. And I struggle to find the actual wording of it. I might have it actually.
It does seem like the ethical dilemmas decrease when you take that as a rule. They're still there. They're still ethical dilemmas, but they are declined in that framework.
Yeah. It says I will use treatments for the benefit of the ill in accordance with my ability and my judgment. But from what is to keep to their harm and injustice, I will keep them. But it's, as I say, it's an oath to do no harm, and I think really that is what ethics should be.
So I think that we started the show with Jason talking about the diversity within the Christian community about what ethics are, and he talked about a bunch of different variants based on denomination of how Christian ethics are perceived. And I think that we ended the show by illustrating or demonstrating how diverse secular ethics can be, right? Because my positions might be potentially a little bit different than Cliff's, different than I'm going to try to say this again. Cerberus. Is it a hard or a soft C? Please help me with this.
In English, it's usually Cerberus. That's what I go by. But if you're
Excellent.
in the Greek, it's Kerberos.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Nice. Thank you for that lesson. So Cerberus gave a version that was, different than both Cliff and mine. Xbox, had his, he acquiesced that, Cliff and I kind of encompass most of what he had to say, and Nadia had to say what she had to say. So, I mean, this is all good reason to understand why morality, ethics, as it's understood, is not monolithic, whether it be applied to secularism or Christianity or any other, theistic position that exists. So I think that, that's, as far as building bridges, I think that we did a pretty good job of illustrating how diversity contributes to a good conversation. Because if everybody agreed, it would just be what do they call it? A backslapping session, if you will. And that's not necessarily what it was. I learned quite a bit in the past.
Or an echo chamber.
I actually found the quote I was looking for. It says, "I swear this oath in whatsoever place I will enter, that I will enter to help the sick and heal the injured, and I will do no harm." That was the one I was looking for.
Thanks. So I'll after the video tomorrow, I'll put the link of the secular thing. If you've got any articles or anything you want me to put links to, and I'll give you a link to the liberation theology and stuff like that if you're interested.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, guys. If you want to see me and John McDropout have it out tomorrow, I think we'll do a bit of sparring tomorrow, friendly sparring.
2 men enter, 1 man leaves.
But hey, thank you, guys. Thank you, and special thank you to the atheist community yesterday, showing their kindness to me as well. So thank you.
Yeah, I was quite moved by that.
So thanks a lot, and if you want to come around, pop in tomorrow, you're welcome to them. And thanks for your time and just giving your time tonight as well. I appreciate it. I've enjoyed listening to what you've had to say.
Great day, everyone.
Me too.
Thanks a lot. Have a good evening, guys. Take care. Thank you very much. God bless. I'm gonna turn it off now. So take care, guys.